bringing attention to the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001, and a whole lot more. This is 9/11 Free Fall. Good evening, everyone. This is Andy Steele. Thanks again for listening. Tonight the guest is David Hooper. He's the guy behind the new movie that's going to be coming out called The Anatomy of a Great Deception. And this is about his own personal awakening story, awakening to the real nature of the 9/11 crime, the fact that the buildings in New York were brought down in controlled demolitions, towers 1, 2, and 7, and of course a lot more. So the movie is something that everyone needs to see once it's out there, and we're going to be talking about it. He'll be going into greater detail of what he covers, and I think it's a good movie just from what I've seen of it so far, because it really talks to the people who are not very familiar with the evidence yet, people who aren't very familiar with the issue, maybe just opening their eyes for the first time. He approaches the whole topic in a way that is just kind of like you see it through his eyes, as we all experienced it when we first knew that there was a problem with the official 9/11 story, and all of the inner turmoil and outer turmoil in his personal life that he goes through is documented in that. So I'm going to be playing that interview for you. It's a very long one. I'll be playing that for you in just a few seconds. Before I do play that for you, we're going to do what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We'll do that starting now. And that is 10 seconds. Dave Hooper is a filmmaker. His movie, The Anatomy of a Great Deception, which is still being produced, chronicles his own awakening process to the true nature of the 9/11 crime. He'll be telling us more about that movie. Dave, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
Great. Now, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is very exciting. Your movie looks like it's going to be a very good one, and what I like about the nature of this movie, the tone that it takes, is it's basically addressing your average person, just an ordinary guy waking up to this, what you go through personally, your internal dialogue, what it does with your life. So I'm very excited to have you on here, because I think that more needs to be created, more content needs to be created addressing that, these very basic personal issues people go through as they wake up to what 9/11 really was. So credit.
Yeah, I found so much out there that is about the technical, the facts, the science behind the impossibility of the official story. There have been a lot of films done about 9/11. This won't be the first one that's ever done, but as far as I know, I haven't come across one that talks about the emotional story that goes on behind the scenes that's happened with so many people, I'm sure. Well, they're reaching out to me as we speak, so I know they're out there. A lot of people that wake up to 9/11, there's some personal turmoil that comes into your life as you realize these things, and it's not easy to cope with, and that's mostly what I documented. A lot of it was the impact on me and my family and those around me, as it all started with just one innocent question and just unfolded from there. And ultimately made this to speak to a few people close to me directly, but that's how we got here.
I can sympathize probably more than a lot of people with folks who don't listen to the evidence initially, because when you first hear something like this, it sounds like what we're taught to think is just conspiracy theories. The media has done a great job of conditioning the public over the years to associate any kind of reasonable inquiry into major events with the space alien people and that kind of stuff, kind of like make you think like you're some, they always use that term, tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, to try to marginalize anybody that raises questions. And when you actually start digging into it and you start looking at this evidence and trying to debunk it, it's
not possible. I mean, unless you're lying to yourself, being intellectually dishonest, you have to admit there's something to it. And as you dig deeper and look into the media cover-up, you realize that there is a major problem going on, and that does have a major impact on people's lives. So now I want to get a better idea of you, because I don't really know a lot about you personally from your website. Tell us about your background. What were you doing before you went down this path and started making this movie?
I was just a regular guy, a regular business guy with a family, 4 children. Actually, at the time, we had 3, and my wife was pregnant with number 4. And I really spent my life just in business. I went to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, studied psychology and communication. So my dad used to tease me. He'd say that, great, now you can turn on a TV and you know why you want to do it. So he'd get a little laugh out of that one. But that actually was a great foundation for business, because that was about communicating with people and understanding how people think, individuals versus how groups think. That's very important here, because the dynamics of that are at play on the world's public. And so from after college, I have essentially been a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business, I think, the day I got out of school. I say I started it. My dad actually started it, and I watched him do it. We did it together. But that spawned a career for me of entrepreneurship. Over the years, I've started, I guess, this film, and the film company behind it would be number 6. But I started 5 other businesses in my life. Sold a couple. I've had a few go down the toilet, and one is still going. It's been around for about 20 years, and really that's been my life. I was working on my next business, which I wouldn't even rule it out yet, but that's really irrelevant to this story. I was working on starting a new company. I had exited out of a company I'd started called White Elephant Media. I'd started that in 2004, and I had just gone bankrupt, and I was on my couch trying to figure out how I'm going to pay for my rent next month, and I'm 30-something years old, and back then, I was taking much bigger risks because I was a bachelor and by myself, and was swinging for the fences instead of trying to hit maybe a single. But either way, we started shipping out used DVDs. I did that to just cover my rent for a month, and that was in 2004. And flash forward 5 years later, we had about a $10 million operation with 20-some people, with robotic, automated packaging and distribution systems in our warehouse, and I'd exited out of that business after 5 years and was debating on the next thing to start. For me, that is, I love starting companies. I love new projects, and it just gets my blood pumping. And one night there was a show on. It was in February of 2011, and it was on one of the major mainstream news networks, and they were preparing for the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, and they showed a clip of George Bush in that Sarasota, Florida classroom. And for 10 years, it didn't really occur to me. I was sort of the kind of guy that would roll his eyes when someone started talking about government conspiracy or anything like that. And for whatever reason, on this particular night, it was the night before Valentine's Day, I just remember it so clearly, and that question just popped in my head, which is, why wasn't he taken out of there? This is the leader of the free world, and he's being allowed to sit in what I would consider a bullseye target for any terrorist flying a hijacked plane who decides to change his plans at the last minute because Bush made that school visit public. And it just, the only reason I could really get out of either the White House or any sort of official commentary about it was that they didn't want to scare the children in the school. And I just thought that was laughable. I mean, these kids train for fire drills all the time. It's not a big deal if they have all the kids run out of the school. Everyone does it all the time. So something was weird. And I think most people get that far and they just shrug their shoulders and say, whatever. You know, I'm sure there's an explanation. I'm just going to trust the people that, you know, guard our lives, because that's what we typically do. And for whatever reason, I just kept looking. And I tried to get better answers, and one question led to another, and after a while, when I was trying to speak to my friends about it, they just were not really receptive. It's not the kind of thing you can talk about. It's the sort of thing you kind of need to see, and that's what I did with the movie, was put together the story of it. So that's my background. It's really business. I'm not so much a filmmaker as a business guy. So a lot of guys make movies, and they're filmmakers that then have the problem of getting a film out and distributing it. And that's sort of my background, is movie distribution and sales, and that's what my last company did. So I'm really a business guy that's made a movie as opposed to a movie guy that is trying to now sell a film. So we're kind of blending those two aspects into what we hope is going to be a successful release for this movie in this coming September.
Well, like I said before, I think this is going to reach a lot of people just because, well, you say you're an average guy. You don't sound like an average guy to me. It sounds like you've lived an extraordinary life, and that includes successes and failures. I mean, folks, you know, Abraham Lincoln had bankruptcies, and Thomas Jefferson, you know, he didn't have everything go right for him either in life, but they're still great men. And I mean, you sound kind of like that. You've taken risks, you've done things, and you've done things that a lot of people can't claim they've done. When I hear average guy, I think, you know, I went to go work for the Dixie Cup factory for 30, 40 years, and then I retired. You know, that's the average guy to me. But you do speak on the level of people who, again, aren't experts, who don't think scientifically. And it's funny because there are a lot of people within the movement who have very left-brain kinds of thinking patterns, may lay out the evidence and it might make sense, but there's something in average people that puts up a barrier. And it was Edward Bernays. I watched a documentary on him. He was the person, very, very
subliminal
good
messaging, and if I'm correctly, like advertising the effect of messages on the populace. That was Edward Bernays?
He was, and folks, I'm trying to recall the name of the documentary. I think it's called The Century of the Self, where the BBC talks about him. But he helped sell the World War I to the American public. He helped sell the idea of eating bacon and eggs for breakfast, getting women to smoke for the cigarette companies they wanted to sell to him. Very fascinating guy. He was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. But what he understood was that there's a lot of irrational elements that go into people's thinking as well as the rational ones. This is why people do things that seem to go against their better interests, because, like I said, there's a lot of irrational factors that go into it, even if it doesn't make sense to you. I mean, factors like superstitions people have, factors like loyalty, even blind loyalty, even when the facts presented to somebody clearly shows that their line of thinking is wrong, out of a certain patriotism or nationalism, whatever you want to call it, they will still put up blinders to it. They just can't believe that there's more to the story than what they're being told. So you really do appeal to that. So that's really good. I appreciate you putting this movie out there. A quick point too on the George Bush thing. You were mentioning how what got you started was seeing Bush sitting in that classroom and not leaving it when he was told the story. I found that kind of interesting too. And this gets kind of into what people are thinking, which I try not to get into myself. But yeah, there was a tactful way to leave the room, I think. I could have, if I was president, I would have just simply stood up and just said, this is a great story. Something's come to my attention, so this person is going to take over, but thanks for having me, and leave. So I think that's very interesting too.
The protocol for that type of scenario is rehearsed, it's practiced. There's no, to think that how many Secret Service men were in that school with Bush before, on the morning of. I think there was close to a dozen. I could be way wrong on that, but it was more than one. Let's just say that. So either way you slice it, there has to be a conversation. And think about this, and this is where being involved in creating an organization and understanding how information flows through it and how people behave when they're part of an organization or part of like the Secret Service, they have their own protocols, their own way of doing things. And there is, when you really try and imagine what was the conversation like behind the scenes as the people in the waiting room became aware that, as the official story goes, they became aware, as the rest of the world did, that we were being attacked. How can a competent person, that conversation had to happen between two people that were trained to protect the president, where somehow either they decided or were told from above, don't worry so much about this one. The entire balance of power in the world was supposedly put at risk because they wouldn't follow their own protocol under one of the most incredible events we've ever had in our history. That at the end of the day, I didn't have questions that were that deep when I first started, but since then, in retrospect, those are the questions I think a lot of us should have. Get your own answers to. The truth, I think, will sink in with people the same way you fall in love with someone. You can't prove it on paper. It's just something you know. And once that starts to sink in and your belief system begins to change. It changes your life. It has a lot of implications. Some are difficult in the short run, but in the end, there's truth to that statement that the truth will set you free. It's very enlightening to have a better understanding of how the world really works and what some of the mechanisms are that are at work that keep our world the way it is, because a lot of it is staged and manufactured. I'm sad to say it's just the way it is. It's true. When I first started speaking about this to people, there was incredible amount of resistance, even from people that knew me and knew me as a credible person. And this includes my mom and my sister. I mean, they were teasing me, just calling me, hey, crazy man. And, I laughed a little bit along with them, but it was very frustrating because I knew something that they weren't able to see, and I wasn't able to convey this to them with words. And I couldn't assemble the right amount of clips from that I'd found on the internet. I could never get anyone to sit down and look at this and all of a sudden see enough of it to get it. And that's ultimately when I just put my own story on film, went back and showed it to my wife because we were having some, our marriage was in trouble, frankly. It was not an easy time. And the first thing I thought I needed to do to salvage my own sanity was to make her understand exactly what it was that I was seeing. And it worked because she finally sat down and just her jaw was on the ground. She's like, oh my gosh, I totally get what you're saying. And my mom, same thing happened with her. Then the same thing happened with my sister. And all of these people then started to turn around and they became, I don't know what the proper term is, a truther or truth movement advocate, or at least someone that's aware that there's something else going on. We all get active on different levels, if at all. But I will say that the film was geared towards people that have not been exposed to the controversies of 9/11, and we've screened it for a lot of people that fall in that category, including a 100-person screening back in March where 80% of the crowd had no idea there was a 9/11 controversy. And that's who the film it was targeted for, and that's who it's tested very well with. It's not an in-your-face, here are the facts. There's so many of the things I've seen sound like they're done by an angry filmmaker who's, he's almost pissed off that not everyone understands as much about 9/11 as the filmmaker does, which I understand. I had those. I was angry for a while myself, and angry with everyone around me for not being more vigilant in trying to understand this. But the reality is, I think we need a soft, for those of us that aren't aware of this, just a soft, entertaining, effective introduction into the realities of 9/11, which opens up questions much beyond 9/11. I'm guessing you've delved into that yourself at some point. That's what it was made for, and I think that's why it's been effective. I've gotten a lot of great feedback about the film for that specific purpose of the film. And there's a lot of people that are excited that want to give this to their wives or their family members or their brothers and sisters, because they've been waiting for something they can just hand someone. That is, people that are in the truth movement, it seems, have been waiting for something they can just hand someone around them, a loved one, and say, look, 99 minutes, look at this movie, and then come back and let's talk. Do our friendship a courtesy and just spend 99 minutes and watch this. Let's open up a conversation with us. And that happened here in my hometown. A lot of the people that I showed the film to were people that were just local to me, so I've been able to anecdotally measure their responses to the film over the course of the last couple of months. And for me, and for someone that cares about the truth movement now, what those results are have been very encouraging to me. That's one of the things that motivates me to keep going more than anything is the number of people it converted in an evening, and that has me excited.
I totally agree with you that the soft approach is the way to go, and I thought it was really funny when you said a lot of these films are made by someone who sounds like they're angry that everybody doesn't know as much about 9/11 as they do. And I think a lot of that stems from people who started waking up. There seemed to be this golden age from 2005 to about 2007 when a lot of the people who are very vocal in the truth movement woke up, myself included. I woke up around that time too. And when you initially start out, very skeptical, and which is what you need to be, and you also are very open talking to people. And then when you're getting shouted down and called crazy for talking about basic physics or just pointing to Building 7 and saying, no way could a fire have done that, why don't we just have a new investigation, it does tend to make people a little angry, and that raises the volume of the debate into something where people can't communicate with each other. So I'm not going to say that people have been ruined and they can't make movies now because they've been through all of this for these years. But it's great the perspective you bring as somebody who's only awakened in the last couple of years, and you can still kind of touch into that part of yourself, that past part of yourself that didn't know about this and understand where people are coming from. I can too. I like I said, I'm sympathetic, more sympathetic probably than a lot of people, because I just know how the average person thinks. The average person hears something, at least a couple of years ago, they would hear something about this and it sounded crazy. It doesn't sound so crazy anymore because of everything that has happened over the past decade. And, the finding out about the NSA surveillance, the loss of civil liberties, the endless wars, just the constant stream of stories about what our government is doing is starting to, make people more open to the idea that there is more to 9/11 than what they saw, plus the work of the 9/11 truth movement, putting out information that's there ready to be picked up. I mean, somebody who doesn't listen to this show right now, who might think that I was crazy if they heard me, they may pick up on the show 3 years from now and be listening to this very broadcast. And it's been put out there for them to pick up. Same goes with anybody who's made 9/11 truth movies. So that's the good thing, is you just put it out there, plant those seeds, and have it ready to be, picked up by folks when they are ready to look at the information.
The event in the minds of the people, or I should say so many people, it is such an important and powerful event, especially when you look at it a second time. Think of all the people, and you're one of them, and now I'm one of them too, that have actually done something with their life where their objective is to help raise awareness of this. And no, sometimes we have to understand what success is in a truth movement. I know there are a lot of people inside the truth movement that are frustrated that there hasn't been a public trial for the ones that were really involved in 9/11, and it feels like a failure, and it seems that it's this slow-moving process. But you have to understand, you go back and look at the polls that started coming out, probably around the time you woke up, somewhere in that, I will call it that sweet spot. I don't know if it was a sweet spot for the guys that first started coming out and talking, like the Loose Change guys and the Dr. David Ray Griffins. They took a brunt of a beating from the mainstream media back then while they were doing everything they could to keep the story quiet. But what they started, the seeds that they planted, where are we today? Roughly half of the country doesn't believe the official story anymore. Some polls have it as high as 70 or 80%, and depending on the specific question you ask, we're dealing with massive amounts of the population now. And I don't think the Bill Rileys of the world are going to be able to continue doing this outright dismissal, because their audience is changing right before their very eyes, and they're going to have to change their approach to this, not one of dismissing, but I suspect they're going to start to discuss it more and try and sweep it under the rug a little bit, as the mainstream media seems to help the powers that be do for those kinds of things all the time. So I don't know where I was going with that, but there's I sense a shift, like what you were talking about, that it's a lot easier to discuss 9/11 today. You know, I've been in business for a long time, and I know what's involved when you don't have credit and when you're trying to set up an account or you want to throw an event somewhere. There are, you know, typical barriers to business of any sort. And I was fully expecting to be dealing with those. And what I've actually found out was it was actually the opposite of what I was expecting. I had a lot of people that have been inside the truth movement for a long time telling me things like, oh, you'll never get this film on the radio. You'll never get anything involved with mainstream media. You'll never be able to have this film at a conventional movie theater. And what I'm finding is that as we reach out to these organizations, we are, almost at every single one of them, we have been met by, maybe this is God's grand design, who knows, but we are met by people that share our beliefs, and they've actually bent over backwards to help this film along the way, doing things that I would not normally expect in a typical business setting. So there's more than just money involved in these transactions when we're negotiating airtime, for instance. I feel like I'm talking to someone who's on my side of the table for once. And that is not, I was not expecting that. I don't think that existed inside the 9/11 truth movement maybe 10 years ago. But the sheer number of people now in this country that at least, I mean, even if they're closet fans of it, they are, I can feel this, they're cheering on and rooting for anybody that's out there trying to get the truth out. Because at the end of the day, Andy, if everyone does something like what you're doing or what I'm doing or what Richard Gage has done, if everyone does even something a little bit like that, we will have full knowledge. There will be a lot more transparency, and we'll be able to repair our society, which is, I think, in big, big trouble. Yeah, I think this is a vital issue for our country, and we need more people doing this for this debate to get to the next level, which is some sort of a trial or some sort of something. I don't know if that will ever happen, but let's at least get the court of public opinion to be aware of what the outcome of this trial would be. And there's enough evidence out there for any person, and this is why I said a regular guy, any regular person that has at least an 8th grade education, let's say, and an ounce of logic in them. Just look at the evidence and follow your heart, and I think that the truth will become revealed to you. It will dawn on you, and that will lead you possibly in some new directions. And for me, it ultimately was tied to what I've labeled a spiritual awakening at the end of the day. But what each individual does with it is really, that's up to them. But as a nation, I think that let's get this to the point where we can talk about it at parties and in line at the cash register at the store, and grease the skids for the mainstream media to have to discuss this. That is my hope.
Well, you talk about what spells success for the truth movement. I think there's many there's many successes. I mean, one thing is that we've put this out there in people's minds like you're describing here. So the media and the government and, what we call, quote-unquote, the establishment, for lack of a better term, has to take this into account whenever they deal with new issues. You were talking about how people like the O'Reillys and the Hannitys have to change the way they do business on their shows because their audience has changed. About a few months ago, I was driving my mom to the airport, and I was coming back, and the only talk radio station that I could get in had on the Hannity show. And I felt like listening to talk radio, so I was listening, and he wasn't hosting that day. It was some woman who was filling in for him. But she had made some mention about government tyranny. And so it was just kind of funny because, she's doing this in Sean Hannity's name, and Sean Hannity wasn't towing this line back during the Bush administration, and it just sounded so hollow and so phony, and it just sounded like such pandering. But I kind of realized we are winning because they have to toe this line. Even though this woman sounds like she's just kind of throwing it out there and just kind of filling in the blanks on the script, almost like some kind of Mad Lib type of deal, or just almost kind of like I'm not going to say she was reading off a teleprompter, but essentially was inserting that because that's what the audience wants to hear. The fact that they feel that they need to do that now, whereas years ago they would attack anybody that would talk like that, shows just how far we have come. And I think that we prevent future attacks from happening when we speak out about this. And we've gotten to that point where people will come out of the closet. People just, when you get in conversations with them and they ask what I do, because it kind of comes up, and they already know about this. Not necessarily about my show or myself and my participation in the movement, but they know about the issue, and they agree. And they're so excited. It's almost like you're a Coast Guard ship. They've been stranded on a deserted island for years, and you're the Coast Guard ship picking them up. They're coming running off the beach and swimming up to your boat. And they're just excited. And they keep on repeating the same facts that you already know about. And, I go over them week after week, but they're telling me like it's like they're educating me about it. And I let them do it because, again, they're excited. So, no, I mean, there are many different successes that can be attributed to the 9/11 Truth Movement. Just because we haven't had a trial yet and we haven't had anyone put in jail for it doesn't mean that we're not having an impact or that we won't get there eventually.
Yeah,
now,
I had an
it's funny.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I had an interesting little event like that happen to me. This was a few weeks back. So I told you before we had a online media selling company. We were about 10 million, and one of the people that helped us grow that is my old VP of operations. And I called her up. I was in Chicago, and I said, hey, let's have dinner, because I'd been thinking about getting her involved with this film. This would be right up her alley. So I go and have dinner, and she brought her significant other with her. And she had no idea what it was we were going to be talking about. She just knew that I had a project and I wanted to meet with her. So I start telling her what the film's about. And every time, at first I was very sheepish and afraid about announcing what the film was about. And I got a lot of that from my wife because back then she had a lot of brakes on in terms of, going public with our thoughts about this information. So I sit down, her name is Nellie, and I sit down with Nellie and Alex for dinner, and my wife is with us. We're in Chicago, and I start talking about the film. And as soon as I start talking about 9/11 Truth, Nellie, she just leans back in her chair and says, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And Alex, who's sitting right across from me, he starts laughing, like in a cathartic, vindicated kind of way. And I said, am I missing something here? And Alex then spoke up. He said, Dave, I have been trying to tell Nellie that 9/11 is just there's something absolutely wrong about it, and she hasn't listened to me. And Nellie and I have a very good relationship. We have for years. It's like a father-daughter one. And I suspect that I know Alex. She considers that the two men that were at that table that night, she made the comment, you're two of the most influential men in my life, and here you both have this hard opinion about something that I just can't believe, and she herself said, I'm wondering if, these are signs for me to actually start looking into this myself. And she has, and she now that she saw the film and has done some of her own research, she is a believer. She's a truther, and she's hopped on the film, and both of them are, I feel like the relationship is better. I'm not because I'm some relationship solver, believe me, I've got my own problems with those, but in terms of this information flowing into their home, it helped bridge a connection between the two of them, the same way it did with my wife, the same way it's done with a lot of other people that have introduced this to their spouse back when we were showing versions of the film a few months ago. And even right inside of our inner circle, that same dynamic, that same thing is happening where you can live in a house with someone under the same roof and you have completely different opinions of what 9/11 is or what it was. And that is, again, that's one of the purposes of the movie, The Anatomy of a Great Deception, is to help bridge so many households that are in, because I know that what's the word I'm looking for, the ongoing debate inside of a home, that either exists or in a lot of cases the conversation has completely stopped, and that there's a part of your relationship you're not sharing with those close to you because something that's so important to you don't even discuss with them anymore. There's a lot of truthers that are in that category as well, and it's I don't know if I'd call it suffering in silence so much, but I think you get the picture. It's not an easy topic to broach, and I think we need more tools to help broach it. And on that, let me ask you a question. How did you get here, Andy? Like you've got a radio show. How did you get started? And specifically, what was it that got you awake when you started talking about this a few years back?
Sure, I'll quickly tell the story. Actually, it was I've come back from China a week before 9/11 happened, and I had a girlfriend who was from Taiwan at that point, or back then, who I had in China, and they had to say goodbye to her. And when we went back, we were still talking. She had an American teacher who had forwarded, it must have been awake to this kind of stuff at the time, and had sent out an email of some military guy. I don't even remember the details of the email, but basically it was a transcript of an interview in which he was saying that there had to have been explosives in the buildings to help bring it down. There must have been inside complicity. And she forwarded it to me a few days after 9/11 happened, and I just kind of dismissed it. I just kind of jokingly just saying, wow, this stuff started quick. Conspiracy theorists and ways to save time with this.
Conspiracy theorists, exactly.
Right, and so, I didn't get mad or anything like some people. I just kind of politely deleted it and didn't think about it and watched the news and went on with my life. And then I went and did Peace Corps, and I actually argued in favor of the Iraq War at first because I just figured, Bush knew something we didn't and trusted government. And then while I was in the Peace Corps, a lot of the stuff about Iraq War being a lie was coming out, and that was really disgusting me because I felt like a fool. And then there was a massacre. Talked about that, and I watched the president of that country that I was in basically tell the public that not as many people died as actually did, and they were all terrorists. And it was funny because the reaction of the public, of the people in that country, they knew better. A lot of them did. People who didn't buy the official story of what actually happened at this massacre, but they were afraid and they wanted to keep it kind of hushed. And later on when I woke up to 9/11, I kind of saw this reflected in our society about 9/11 too, so that's kind of interesting. But I started just waking up to various things, the drone strikes, how unfair and irresponsible those were, and then I came back from Peace Corps. I was on a website, and somebody snuck in a 9/11 video, and from there, because I couldn't debunk it, I started looking into other things, and it kind of led me down this road. So that's kind of a shortened version of my own awakening, since you asked. But also, too, I wanted to just comment, because I'm on Pins and Needles listening to you talk about the barriers that were erected between people as a result of 9/11, because I've talked about that, too. I've actually written on that, about that being a secondary tragedy of the 9/11 event. And I remember growing up in history classes how they would talk about during the Civil War, brother versus brother, son versus father, and you kind of, it sounds like just some dramatic line in
Hollywood,
a movie they're throwing
embellishment.
Exactly, but because you don't understand that until you actually live that, and that's part of the axe that I have to grind with the establishment and the people who perpetrated 9/11 too, whoever they may be, whoever those individuals are, is that they've created these divisions, that they've caused this kind of strife in people's relationships. Whereas if 9/11 hadn't happened, we wouldn't have this. Not saying that everything would be hunky-dory between everyone, but you wouldn't have this particular wall being put up between people who would otherwise have maybe gotten along. You know, folks, certain hostile debunkers who I might have liked personally, had we not met under these circumstances, it just didn't need to be. The circumstance didn't need to be. These hostile, negative emotions didn't need to exist. But here we are. And it's funny, in the movie, or the parts of the movie that I've seen, you use this analogy of about catching a spouse in a lie. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that it was the closest. The film is filled with metaphors, and I've used them throughout my life. I like to boil things down to a very simple subset of what we're dealing with, so we're not overwhelmed by the grandiosity of a particular topic. And something that many of us have dealt with, and I was a little nervous about putting this in there because I didn't want to bring up bad memories for anyone, but I'm guessing most of us have been betrayed by a loved one, by a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a wife or a spouse. You get the picture. And it's, I equate it, I reached a point where the shock of having to re-understand my life in a way, knowing that this institution, let's just call it our government, and that's too broad really of a term to be using here, because our government is not evil. There are some people that work inside of our government that have a lot of power. They are evil. But the vast majority of the government, the teachers and the police officers and those that work for the social welfare organizations, most of those people are very good people. So understand what I'm talking about when I use the term government. It's awfully broad term. So for me, it felt like I'd been betrayed, and I felt like I was reading the diary of my wife. You know, this has never happened to me with my wife. It happened to me with a few girlfriends growing up. So I mean, maybe that's what most of us can identify with, where we find out that, someone we trusted has been deceiving us. And if you've ever you stumble across an email or a diary or something you're really not supposed to be looking at, you have this feeling of, I don't want to know what's in here, but I need to know at this point because my belief system is at stake here. And we all have that drive. I mean, in the minute someone says, hey, I've got something really important to discuss with you, it's hard to even think about anything else. It's the only thing on our mind. That same dynamic is at work. And that's how I felt. I felt betrayed. And it's the closest I could describe the feeling of how I felt betrayed by my government as being betrayed by someone that I love and trust. And that's where I put in the metaphor, if you've ever had to deal with someone you love that betrayed you, you understand the feeling I was having, which is you need to find out more about this, although you might have been better off if you just had lived in ignorance. But once that genie is out of the bottle, there is no putting it back in. You can't unknow the truth. You can't unknow information. And that was a big piece of this. My wife and I had a lot of philosophical conversations with a glass of wine out on the deck where we opined many times about, how nice or different or relaxed our life would have been had we never stumbled onto any of this. We would just be in ignorant bliss like so many people. And there was a time, frankly, where we debated the merits of had that been our path instead of the one we're on. Ultimately, there's a reason we're all here and doing the things we're doing. And, so we decided a long time ago we were going to move forward with this. But that's the analogy, is it felt like a total betrayal. I mean, did you feel like that at all when you came across some of this?
Well, it's funny because I identify with so much in your movie, and you mentioned something in it about that stark moment, like when you see the squibs, and I equate that going back to a significant other metaphor where you might be at a party and you catch a look between your girlfriend and her coworker that's quote unquote just a friend that just says something to you, or some way that they touch each other, or something that just doesn't look right, or that you just see, or something where they might even might catch them hug or something in a certain way that's just not right. And it's that feeling when you see, like you mentioned, when you see the squibs. Squibs was a big part of opening my eyes too, because that's something you can't unsee. I mean, you look at it, it's not air rushing out, there's building materials, and then they're so far below the collapse line and so perfectly timed that, again, it's one of those things that once you see it, you don't unsee it. And you can either lie to yourself or pursue the truth no matter how ugly it may be. And I guess that's where people differ, is the people who want to go on living in the fairy tale and believing the official story, and those who will face it.
My mother at first, she was worried about my mental health when I first brought this up to her, and she's like, "Oh, son, I'm essentially, I think you're losing it." And flash forward to after she'd seen the movie, she was now inviting her friends to come over, and she's a sweet 83-year-old woman from Colombia, South America. She has a big, thick accent here, and loving, wonderful, very faithful woman. She started inviting some of her friends to come over and have me screen this for them. And one of them was the husband of one of her dear friends who is a retired engineer. And his name's Tony. And before the film began, I just had asked them, so, what do you guys remember about 9/11? What are the things that stand out? And Tony, the engineer, said, well, I remember the planes destabilizing the building, and then essentially the domino effect beginning and the building collapsing in on itself. And before the film started, we started talking about, again, a metaphor, and I said, Tony, let's say you built a Lego tower that had the same dimensions of the World Trade Center, and we, in a hypothetical Lego world, we pull the top 15 floors off the Lego tower, and heck, let's hold it 4 feet over the rest of the Lego tower. And if you drop the top of this Lego tower onto the remaining bottom portion of the Lego tower, do you expect the top of the tower to pile drive its way through the Lego tower, which is only assembled with no welding, these are just little pieces stuck on. Even at that level, you understand, wait a minute, what I saw is impossible. That cannot happen. You can't drop a bowling ball next to the top of this, this theoretical Lego tower and have them hit the ground at the same time. It cannot happen. And so before the film began, all of a sudden, my engineering friend Tony, he got real quiet, and he just started watching the film. And what most people, the reaction is they're just quiet right after. There's not, frankly, a lot of discussion. I think it's just sinking in. And then afterward, do they circle back around and say, hey, I did my own research into this. Even the lawyers that are helping us with this film, at first they thought, okay, so we're going to be helping you launch a conspiracy movie. And they watched it as part of, they admittedly said, look, we're not really believers in anything 9/11, but we can help you with this film. And I got a call from him on just last Thursday, and he's like, holy cow, we saw the movie. We brought some other partners in because we were talking about it. They wanted to see it. We've already done our own research, and our legal team is right now grappling with, they just discovered essentially 9/11 was a staged event, and now they're they're also helping with this film. So that is happening more and more, and that's very encouraging to me. So yes, someone that could even spend their life right in engineering and can see something. It's kind of scary, what we trust so willingly what we see with our eyes and what we are told by our authority figures. And that's how we're raised to do both of those things. And I never realized how easy it is to deceive. I think actually it's easier to deceive 1 million people than it is to deceive one. But it's there. It's plain as day. That's exactly what happened, and that has very serious implications for our world and our country once you understand what 9/11 was. Because if you think it's an event in the past that has no bearing on our future, you have been deceived as well. Because this is not over. The fallout from 9/11, the next portion of it, I'll say, has not happened yet, and we still have a chance to curtail whatever it is that might be coming our way, but we'll only do it if we know what the bad guys know, if we know what they're up to and we get their method of operation. And it happens one at a time. There'll be someone listening to your radio show somewhere, and something clicks in them. Something clicks, and then they begin their own research, and it branches out from there. I think that's been happening all over this country for the last 13 years now, and that's why more than half of this country doesn't believe the official version, and a very large percent of them flat out believe it was just a completely staged event by people inside of our government. That's a smaller subset than the people that just question the official version. But those numbers grow every year. You do not look at the evidence and then all of a sudden become an official versioneer. The movement is only in one direction. You look at the evidence and you become a truther. And that's why the gatekeepers of this world will do just about anything to try and get you to really look at that for yourself and think about it on your own terms. They're going to try and tell us what to think or to just not think about it at all. And people, I don't think they're buying it anymore, and I think they're ready to open up this conversation.
I compare it to trying to visualize a color that you've never seen before. It's not a combination of two colors that you already know. Just think of an entirely new color. It's impossible because the brain can only make things out of what it already knows. It can't create something completely different like a new color. It has to have seen it before. And so I think a lot of people, even people in engineering, were not exposed to the idea that there could be more to the 9/11 crime. They were put in this position where they had to explain what they had just seen, and so they come up with all sorts of rationales, or even if they have to jump through hoops to make it happen, to do some mental gymnastics to make it happen. And so, again, people just didn't think that there could be more to the crime than what they know now, or than what they've been told, rather. So, moving on, in our last couple minutes here, I just want to know, obviously the movie's going to come out. It's going to be a big hit, I think, when people see it, and because it speaks to so many different kinds of people, laymen, and then it'll run through its course, and then you'll be doing something else. So first, answer for the audience, how will they be able to watch this movie once it's out? And then what are your plans for the future? Do you plan any other kind of projects for 9/11 Truth after you're done with this movie?
All right, to answer your question, so anyone that wants to watch the film or get involved with the film, when September rolls around, and I think the official release date is going to be September 5th, we will, that could change by a couple days back or forth in the next week or so. But assuming that it releases September 5th on a Friday, you'll be able to go onto our website. You'll be able to rent it for just a video stream. You'll be able to digitally download it. You'll be able to order a single DVD and have it shipped to you. You'll be able to order the DVD at a big discount in a 10-pack so that you can give it to your friends. I've had a lot of business people say, well, you're cannibalizing your sales if you do that. And, we need to make enough money to support the people that are working on the film, but this is not about profit. I would be happy to sell this movie, recovering our costs, getting enough money into the hands of the people that are helping us promote it, in exchange for having one truther buy 10 of these to then hand out to their friends as gifts or whatever. So there will be lots of ways to purchase the film, not just through our site. We'll be on all the conventional, the iTunes and the Amazons. You'll be able to just Google the film, and a variety of websites should be able to lead you to finding a way to either see it on digitally on your computer, on DVD, or what will be our theater schedule. And we're going to be focusing on the city of Detroit in September. And if the release works well in September, we'll continue this release city by city across the nation. And the interesting thing about the release and why this film, it's not just different in the content of the film, it's different in the way we're releasing it, because we are going around the industry gatekeepers. And I know these guys well because this was the waters I swam in through most of the 2000s. You know, this one is familiar territory for me. And so we put a plan together where we're going to get the film for sale on curiosity-inducing, enticing displays right by the cash register of thousands of stores, retail stores, any kind of store. The kinds of places where regular people just pop in to buy their things. Doesn't matter, dry cleaner or a woman's boutique. It really doesn't matter. If they're willing to put the film up in their store with some display materials discussing the release and the theater schedule and things of that nature, we're going to put these things next to the impulse purchase area of thousands of checkouts all over the region. And if it works here, we'll continue that type of city-by-city release across the country.
The guest has been Dave Hooper. His film is The Anatomy of a Great Deception. Dave, thanks for coming on 9/11 Freefall.
Thanks a lot for having me, Andy.
Remember, you can hear this program every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download the show by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and good luck.